Hello, everyone. I'm Kate Gray, Director of Corporate Engagement at the Marketing Science Institute. As many of you know, nonprofit MSI serves as the bridge between marketing theory and business practice, and our goal is to move the needle on significant marketing problems. We do this by funding research by leading academics worldwide on topics voted by our 70-plus corporate sponsors, and then disseminating that research through members-only events and a variety of publications. I'm very pleased to welcome you to another MSI 4 Members, 5 Members webinar. This is a series of webinars on subjects related to MSI's current research priority topics. First, I'd like to point out the Chat with Presenter function in the left-hand corner of your screen. Please use this feature to send through any questions you have for Michael or Scott during the presentation. We will gather the questions and have a brief Q&A session following the presentation. Now I'd like to introduce you to today's featured speakers. Scott Breitenother, Vice President of Data and Analytics at Casper, and Michael Cohen, Head of Analytics and Data Science at AOL's Convertro. Scott is Vice President of Data and Analytics at Casper. His team supports all areas of the business from operations to marketing. The Data and Analytics team aims to be the analytical firepower that helps Casper's already great teams perform even better. Prior to working at Casper, Scott worked at LEK Consulting, a business strategy consultancy in London and Tokyo. He graduated from Babson College with a BS in Business Management and London School of Economics with an MS in International Management. Casper is a sleep startup that launched in 2014 with one perfect mattress sold directly to consumers, eliminating commission-driven inflated prices. The award-winning sleep service was developed in-house, has a sleek design, and is delivered in a small, how-do-they-do-that size box. Casper expanded its universally comfortable product line in 2015 to include a perfect pillow and a super soft sheet. The company is one of the fastest growing consumer brands of all time, with 100 full-time employees, 100,000 Casper owners, and more than $100 million in lifetime sales. Michael Cohen is a predictive data science engineer and scholar with organizational leadership experience in the development of methods and software for data-driven management. He works closely with business decision makers and innovates to provide intuitive, business-oriented results, facilitating the adoption of advanced analytics. He also teaches executives, MBAs, PhDs, and undergrads marketing management and predictive analytics. Michael maintains a scientific research program that develops data-driven methods for managerial decision-making. His subject matter expertise is in digital media and e-commerce, food marketing, corporate social responsibility, and competitive strategy, which is backed by extensive technical expertise in data management and analytics, econometrics, and Bayesian statistics, management and marketing science, software application engineering, technical and cloud computing, decision support systems, and optimization. So with that, I will turn it over to Scott and Michael to begin.
Perfect. Let me pop over to the beginning of the presentation. So I'm Scott Breitenother from Casper. I'm very honored to be invited by MSI to speak at this webinar and excited to be speaking with the incredibly smart and talented Michael Cohen from Convertro. Convertro is a big partner for Casper, and we've been working together for quite a while, so it's an exciting opportunity to work with them. I'd also like to thank the incredibly talented analytics and marketing teams for making all this possible on the Casper side. I can only achieve this, and we could only achieve such great things with attribution by having such great teams. So what I'm going to be doing today is diving into what I call Casper's attribution evolution. And before I jump in there, I'm going to speak a little bit about Casper. I was given such a great introduction from MSI, so I don't have too much to add. The only things I would point out it's just a fun fact. We're a very data-driven physical product company. So before launching our innovative foam mattress, we tried thousands of different combinations to find the perfect combination for the best night's sleep, which involved maybe not necessarily statistically significant tests, but lots and lots of tests to find the perfect mattress. And if you haven't tried a Casper mattress, I'd encourage you to get out there and try. We have showrooms in LA and New York, and like all mattress companies, we have a traveling Matmobile that is going around the United States. We have an East Coast store and a West Coast store that might be stopping by a city near you to check out the mattress. So now the attribution evolution. For me, I was really searching for, I guess, the best metaphor for our journey into attribution. And evolution really, I think it really hit the mark. And for me, that's because evolution means how do you change to thrive and survive in a changing environment. And for us, the changes are all around. Online marketing is a field that is constantly changing. There's constantly innovations and challenges and new opportunities. And you literally have to evolve to do well and to thrive in this industry. And then to add to it, the mattress industry is a constantly changing industry as well. When we started a year and a half ago, we were an innovator in the space. We were very, very different from the established brick-and-mortar competitors. Since then, we've had a number of smaller copycats. While we're still the originator, the market has significantly changed. And on a personal note, seeing how far we've come in the journey, I look back and I can kind of relate to that monkey and kind of realize that that was once me at the start of this. So what I'd like to talk about is kind of before we jumped into multi-touch attribution. This is what I call attribution from the Stone Age. Back then, it wasn't great. It was very manual. We manually pulled, combined, deduped, took the data from the different marketing and analytics platforms, and combined them to do all of our internal reporting. This was incredibly time-intensive, required half a day of work, as frequently as we wanted the reporting updated, which for us was 3 times a week. We also had limited funnel visibility. We used last-click attribution, which you may know over-credits closers, so we really didn't have the visibility to see how were these influencer and introducer channels actually influencing and introducing new potential customers. This resulted in what I would call a dangerous lack of funnel visibility for such a high consideration product. So we are a high ticket item, and so people take a longer period of time to make their purchasing decision. And so as a result, we really needed to know what was going on during that longer period of time. We were forced to rely on, believe, marketing platform results. And I apologize to the marketing platforms that may be out there, but if you go into each one of your platforms and look at their results, and then you add up the sales from each of those platforms, you end up with sales that are about 3 times their actual sales, because every single platform wants to take as much credit for each sale as they possibly can. And without an external tool, you are kind of forced to believe them. And then the last item is also on a personal note. We as the analytics team lack the data to be a good partner for marketing. And it's very challenging to be the team that answers questions, and questions that are kind of smart and deserving of answers, but we just did not have the tools or the information to answer them. And that honestly became more apparent as the company grew. The decisions were bigger, the budgets were bigger, and there was just like more on the line for each decision. So kind of our first step was implementation. So we chose Convertro as our multi-touch attribution tool. And there's kind of two aspects of implementation. There's technical implementation and the process implementation. And for the technical implementation, that was like a snap. That was super easy. We have a great tech team, and we kind of had the resources queued up from when we signed the contract, and when it said go, we could just go for implementation. And we added the universal tag to every page, and then kind of the event tag for conversion events. All in all, it was about kind of a month and a half of implementation, and then we kind of had a month to calibrate and let the model run, and then we launched. The more challenging aspect was actually internal process. If you could imagine, before we had any central tool to run attribution or reporting, there was no need for everybody to be on the same page. Each channel manager used their own UTMs. It wasn't the Wild West, but there was just no need to align. And so we had to go through a large internal process of aligning our internal tagging, defining channels and sources. One of the tools we ultimately made was an internal tagging process and centralized tagging matrix, essentially where each channel and vendor was given a source 1, 2, and 3 as kind of Convertro-defined sources, and that was centrally managed so that we kind of ensured that we didn't just look into the system one day and see this random new source, and that we could be consistent and fair across all the channels and marketing platforms. Our kind of, we had everything implemented, we were ready to go, we were outputting data, and we went to the marketing team and say, hey, marketing, now you use these numbers. And of course, the response was, no. It's hard to change internal process for how you're reporting. As an observer, as an analytics team, truly just as observers and people who are providing the tool, it's easy for us to just move from one platform to another. But for our incredible acquisition team, who lives and dies and reports by these numbers, it was very important to get them much more comfortable with the numbers, and rightfully so. They found they had very good questions that kind of forced us to re-examine and make sure we understood the numbers. So one of the first kind of baby steps we took was just kind of doing things that we couldn't necessarily do in our previous tool. So we've got the customer journey on the left hand of the slide. And as you can see, we have the display impression, which is kind of an influencer or introducer channel in this journey. And due to kind of limitations of our then current reporting, which was last click, we would often use kind of our gut to estimate. Display isn't reporting very well, but it must be doing better because we're just not crediting it. And the exciting part was we could use multi-touch attribution as a way to quantify and support these conclusions. What we used to just kind of use in our gut, we'd be able to actually have a quantitative answer, which was really exciting. And it got to the point where we'd be in meetings, and though Convertro wasn't the kind of reporting tool for us, we'd often have people just say, what does Convertro say? And Convertro internally for us is kind of just how we refer to multi-touch attribution. And that kind of was, brought up more and more often to the point that we ultimately moved our reporting to Convertro. So where are we today? We have multi-touch attribution powered by Convertro as the center of our digital strategy. And for me, that means kind of three core elements. There's the channel operations. So there's our incredible channel managers on our customer acquisition team, giving them the information and the tools to answer tactical and strategic questions. Just like what I was speaking about in the previous slide, they now have the ability to go in and say, what is the role that this channel or strategy or tactic plays in the funnel? How does this fit into the larger picture, which we did not have before? Then there's target setting. We can use multi-touch attribution powered by Convertro to set channel level targets that are intelligent. And then we can not only set these for different tactics, but we can set it for each platform. And like I was saying before, we can really hold the marketing platform feet for the flames. We can say, you say, this should be the target, but this is how we view the target in light of how it fits within the larger funnel. And then in terms of reporting, we automate reporting using Convertro so that we can more easily report on a more frequent basis and not have it exceedingly manual. And then we have the independence to report, use a third party to report on our marketing platforms and marketing performance across all platforms. And again, hold the marketing platforms feet to the flames when they say, we generated X amount of revenue. We can say, well, actually, there was a lot of overlap with other sources, and you actually generated Y amount of revenue. And now what's next? So Casper is partnering with Convertro to really develop the Convertro platform and enable Casper to do some pretty cool things. So one of the things that we're looking at is how do we build A/B testing insights into Convertro's multi-touch attribution model. As you may know, or run PSA tests for display and retargeting. How do we integrate those learnings into Convertro? We are also working to automate raw data extracts from Convertro platform, even more granular than the current reporting. Then we can build things like granular reporting and analysis on non-converting customers. And then what we're excited about is layering Casper Business Logic. We've been in the mattress industry for over 2 years now, so we've learned a thing or two. On top of Convertro's multi-touch attribution and combining kind of the modeling expertise with Convertro with the subject matter expertise and industry knowledge of Casper. Now I hand it over to Michael, who is much more technical and intelligent than I am, and I'm sure in the next few slides you'll see why.
Thanks for the great setup, Scott, and thanks to MSI for inviting us to give this webinar. What Scott's discussion really set up was, understanding about, once you get to the level of being able to understand the full contribution of your marketing and media mix and how well various tactical executions are working for you, that there's a real power in using some of the latest cutting-edge science and data and technology to be able to make rapid insights and precise ones that we can be confident in. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about having confidence in the causal measurement of the marketing impact and some of the things that are marketers' biggest challenges and how we're thinking about addressing those inside a multi-touch attribution product. So here's the motivation. We have highly addressable media these days, and this in and of itself, some of these managerial decisions and some of the technology that allows us to target high-value shoppers or buy media for large amounts of shoppers in an automated programmatic way actually creates some measurement challenges, and specifically what we call these things in the statistical and economics literature is a form of targeting endogeneity. And this is the idea that there is lack of randomness in those shoppers that are being addressed with the media, and therefore we might wrap up some other elements other than the actual incremental effect of the media touch point for that particular shopper in the attribution of that. And the classic example here is something like visitor retargeting. Somebody who visits the website, is that action in and of itself is a higher form of intent, and that shopper is subsequently targeted with media. Wrapped up in attribution to that could be the intent itself, along with that incremental effect of the marketing treatment. So the question is, how do we disentangle that? It's not just as simply as throwing some method or model at the problem, but really understanding what's available in our data and being able to leverage the full range of data, both for a focal client and across the pool of clients that we're able to serve as Convertro, to be able to really parse out that incremental effect so you get more precise measurements, therefore more precise action, more optimal actions, increase your key performance indicators, and most importantly, really get trust in what the attribution decision support software is able to do for you. Without getting that sort of trust, you don't get the sort of organizational adoption of a solution like Casper has had. So we're constantly focusing on making sure we're getting the measurement right, that we're precisely measuring the things that we claim to, and using the latest science to do that. So here's specifically what we're doing with respect to random control testing and another less costly method, propensity scoring, within the MTA solution. So the idea here is that we need to perform some sort of quasi-experimentation to actually parse out this effect. I say quasi because we are doing these experiments in field. They are only being conducted for, in some cases, eligible shoppers who might only be eligible for certain media exposure by virtue of their visit to a website, and understanding how to, one, set up experiments, and two, in the absence of being able to experiment on a continuous basis, which sort of sources of experimental variation we can exploit to actually reliably recover the treatment or incremental effect of the media. So there's going to be two methods that I'm going to outline here. One is the classic random treatment A/B testing sort of framework, and think about how do we just use that experimental variation that's natural in A/B testing within the attribution model to get the true incremental effect of marketing, separate from other forms of marketing contribution, such as brand or shopper intent, that sort of thing, that really constitutes a larger portion of why people buy, and has over the last several years been a source of over-attribution by and large to a number of digital channels that aren't being properly accounted for in some existing solutions out there. So here's just another look, a classic attribution solution, whether they're using some sort of algorithmic model, econometric model, or some sort of conditional probability approach. Either way, multi-touch attribution, in the absence of careful exploitation of this experimental variation, will attribute not only to the actual effect of the media, but also to an omitted effect where these effects exist. So again, this is a focus on media that might be highly targeted to a specific segment of users, that has systematically a different probability or propensity to engage with the brand, to respond to media, or to actually buy the product. And this omitted effect can be large in many cases. And again, I pointed out the retargeting example earlier, but it's quite true there that we see, as I'll show you in results later, that this omitted effect can make up the majority of the attribution measurements, and it really needs to be removed to understand the true value or return on that marketing investment for more precise optimization. So if we have a random control A/B test, and here I'm showing you an example where we have a couple different brands. Here there's 4 different brands, A, B, C, and D, and the specific media here is being delivered on 2 different DSPs. And what we have in The third column there is the total attribution that we get in the absence of being able to take out the control element. So we have attribution to the control, or what might be perceived as attribution to, say, a PSA or some sort of other counterfactual ad that's been delivered, and it's this total effect that we need to clean out the omitted attribution from intent. And once we're able to do that, we can see that the actual treatment effect of the media is much smaller, of course, and that varies quite a bit. So we see in some cases that a lot of the effect is retained. Say in the case of brand A on DSP1, there's still about 1/3 of the treatment effect that remains from the total attribution for the CPM here. And for other ones, it's actually quite small, documenting that these particular executions aren't quite as effective, but they're just being delivered at people or delivered to shoppers that were already likely to convert anyway because of their intent, as this example is for a retargeting type of campaign. So the magnitude is large. So you get a sense for making optimal decisions based on a $25 CPM versus a $3 CPM. We start to see that, one, the numbers are coming more into a range that we can actually trust rather than have something that is, clear over-attribution, especially based on what the market is for these sorts of impressions. But it gives us a better understanding of what are the sources of the actual value. It's not just media. It's not just the digital media. There's other aspects, and whether those aspects are forms of offline media or user intent or brand equity, those things need to be accounted for in the attribution scheme, and this is an example of that. So what's the issue with random control testing? It's expensive because you forego the ability to deliver ads to people who they might be truly effective towards, because you need to do this random treatment thing. And doing so on an ongoing basis is costly, suboptimal, and it's very difficult to scale across the 5,000 different tactical executions that you're trying to manage on a week-to-week basis. So we need something that's a little bit more scalable and not so costly in terms of setting up the experiments, executing them, and then evaluating the results. We want to be able to fold all this stuff into the model in the broadest sense and not have to evaluate these things in isolation. We are evaluating this test along with the other media and attributing, doing attribution for this particular type of media along with the other things. So it's not that we're not including the other things in the analysis. It's just that the only piece where we're getting this true experimental variation is on the A/B test, where that A/B test was executed. This sort of A/B or random control testing or holdout testing is going to be our gold standard for validation and is a way into validating a model and its results, but again, quite costly. So what do we do in the absence of a random control test? It's to use a propensity control. So let me try to set up this idea for you. It's a non-trivial idea, and it comes from a vast scientific literature in econometrics on instrumental variable estimation. But here's the basic intuition. Basically, we're after the incremental effect of the ad, and here I have car insurance as an example, that we see an ad for the insurance, and then we think of the sale or the lead being generated for the particular policy. And if we were just naive and we went and we estimated the model or did attribution here, we might find that we have both the effects of the ad caught up with the intent for people that are more likely to be exposed for the ad, either because they spend more time online or they hang out in the places where you're likely to be targeted with ads, like different car review websites and that sort of thing, where these sorts of ads are targeted. So what we end up with is a confounded measurement. We can't simply explain sales lift with advertisement exposure alone. We need something to control for or get attribution assign attribution to that cleans out this intent. So what's the idea? We're going to be able to leverage exposure data from across clients or across MTA user pool that is composed of many different brands that are trying to market their products. The example I give here is sunglasses, but we can use all of the products. We can use sunglasses, we can use some sort of clothing, we can use mattresses, whatever it may be, ads for those things to explain something not about insurance policy conversions, but about the propensity to be exposed. And it's precisely the fact that it doesn't necessarily or it plausibly doesn't explain anything about insurance policy conversions or becoming an insurance policy prospect, but it does explain something about a particular shopper being exposed because of their either their online activity or the way that they're responding to media. So we can actually build a model for exposure that tells us something about a specific shopper's intent or likelihood to be exposed. So what we have is a good experimental design, just natural within our data that we can exploit to actually recover the treatment effect of the media separate from intent and other forms that are creating bias. So first, we're going to predict how this ads for sunglasses, say something, sunglasses and any other forms of media exposure, tell us something about the propensity to be exposed, and then take that propensity prediction for each and every shopper. Again, this is all being modeled and estimated on a shopper-specific level. That explanatory factor is included in the analysis or in the model alongside the insurance ad. So we're relying on the propensity metric to explain something about these omitted effects, about the likelihood of being exposed or the likelihood of being high intent for purchase, separate from the variation in ad exposure that remains that is truly going to generate incremental lift in the number of insurance policy prospects. So having both of these things in and having the independent variation, the two, is going to allow us to separate out these two effects and then assign proper attribution on a fractional basis to the intent or the propensity to be exposed, separate from the true effect of the media. Now here's a look at some results on a proportional basis for what this sort of correction can do. And for some sources of media or media strategies or tactical execution, such as display, the effect is quite large. And what we're saying here is that there's a 315% reduction if you count the attribution to display after using this propensity score method as a truer measure of attribution, what we had before was over 3 times the attribution measure, so 314% larger measure. That's substantial in terms of where you're thinking about moving your dollars and the performance that you're demonstrating from that particular channel. We see for other things such as coupon that the thing actually goes in the other direction. So if for those of you that know how these bias things actually play out in the context of these attribution models or any sort of marketing mix type of model, where you have correlation between this omitted effect and the focal media that you're trying to measure that's positive, you'll actually have an upward bias, and that's what we see for things like display. But where it's negative, you'll have a downward bias. And so coupons are being directed, arguably at lower value shoppers here. And so having this propensity correction in is actually, going to increase, make the attribution appear the coupon is more effective than we would otherwise believe without having that factor in here. Now, there's other sources of media or there's other tactics out there that would cause this attribution to become more effective. One of the classic ones I outlined a bit earlier is that if we use a strategy that's about maximizing exposure, what ends up happening is we end up exposing a lot of shoppers that are actually lower intent shoppers. And if we have a exposure maximization strategy, we're buying a lot of remnant low value media, we could actually end up seeing an increase in attribution. As an example where the result of the effect, the direction of the bias moves in the other direction. So the message here is that the magnitude of the effect varies quite a bit, and it's proportional to the degree of correlation between the things that we don't observe, that many marketing products, advertising and media strategies are actually conditioning on or making decisions based on that are not always captured in the model. We now are working to get those in the model, and they're having a substantial impact. So what does this mean for the marketer? I mean, if you have a substantial amount of measurement bias, you're going to make suboptimal decisions. You're not necessarily going to capture the full opportunity. You're not going to deliver on your KPIs to the fullest extent. So getting measurement right and the way we do it is absolutely critical to making the right decisions. The other piece here, of course, is trust. If you have results that simply aren't making sense, or they're not palatable, or just don't align with other independent marketing research, such as other A/B testing that is done, the actual attribution solution will suffer from adoption. And what we need is something that does have a truer measurement, and therefore gets more credence and is more likely to be adopted within the organization, like it has for Casper. The third thing I'm outlining here is that there's a number of these sorts of factors, and they're hidden and they're not necessarily intuitive. We can talk about everything from the delayed effects of media to the viewability of media, or these unmeasured intent or baseline probability of conversion factors that, in the absence of a keen eye, could be hidden. And the implications of that for attribution and understanding the ROI and optimizing media based on that really requires an experienced partner in making sure that the measurement and the underlying measurement model that's being used is aligning with the business questions and the recommendations that that's giving in a way that the manager can be quite confident. Finally, we can, of course, use random control testing as a gold standard to validate attribution. This is in stark contrast to a lot of model fit holdout testing that has been classically used. The reorientation here is towards getting the causal measurement right, because after all, that's the thing that the manager is going to use to make decisions based upon, rather than having a model that fits well some sort of predictive outcome. Well, that works in cases where prediction, in-sample prediction, is a focus for the measurement exercise. It doesn't work well where causal measurement is the objective. So in summary, we identified that media tactics themselves can be the source of bias, or particular strategies or digital media products that allow us to address very specific consumers can make measurement difficult, but that's okay. We can correct that in two different ways. Either we can use a random control testing experimental setup, and then exploit that random data or experimental variation of the data in the context of the multi-touch attribution algorithm, or we can leverage random variation or experimental variation from a cross-section of media exposure to tell us something about the propensity or likelihood that a shopper would be exposed independent of their intent to actually shop, and therefore independent of the incrementality of the media that we actually aim to measure the attribution of. And finally, I showed you some results here that demonstrate the magnitude of this change for a couple key clients, but the results will vary substantially from one brand to the next, and will vary substantially across different types of media and technology that we use to execute those things. So with that, I'll close.
Great, thank you both so much. We're going to take some questions from the audience, and as a reminder, please send the questions directly through the chat with presenter function that's in the left-hand corner of your screen. So to start, over Casper's evolution, from the Stone Age of attribution, what media or channels or sites really surprised you in terms of attribution, either positively or negatively?
That's a good question. It's funny because when people always ask, what is that kind of aha moment you had? And for me, it's less of an aha, change everything moment. It's more of a have the confidence to make the decisions you need to make. So as the budgets got larger and kind of it wasn't put a dollar here, put a dollar there, there were a few more zeros. We needed that confidence to make those decisions. And it was more gradual learning that helped us sharpen our strategy. So unfortunately, there was no kind of aha moment where we said cut this channel or cut this or add this channel. It was more of the confidence to make big decisions and the gradual learning over time.
That's great. One question, was the TV you ran a part of the multi-touch attribution?
So we do not run our TV attribution through the multi-touch attribution algorithm. TV is a bit of a special animal that we treat separately. I think at the end of the day, there is this goal to keep everything in one model, and I think that's a really good goal. But you should also have, as a backup, you should have kind of separate methods of measurement. I mean, in general, we try to have multiple sources of truth because hopefully Michael doesn't kill me, but nothing is ever 100% correct. Even the most advanced attribution algorithms are not 100% correct. Until we have the technology to have microchips in everybody's brains to know exactly what was the straw that broke the camel's back and made them convert, we really just need to have multiple sources of truth that we can use to triangulate and get a number that we're very comfortable with.
That's great. A follow-up question to that, can Convertro use the TV within this multi-touch attribution? And then how do you determine which channels to include as a part of your initial implementation? So
yes, TV and other sources of offline media can be included and accounted for in a multi-touch attribution model in various ways, but they are included. We, of course, recommend having all the measured media channels included, as well as other aspects that are influencing consumer choice. External factors, behavioral factors, cadence of purchase and engagement with the brand, the whole gambit of factors influencing the purchase outcome should be included, either to the extent that that data can be piped in or can be tagged in some way, or to the extent that we can actually leverage some of the existing data to include factors in the model that account for some of these behavioral or inertial factors in consumers' decision making.
And do you use algorithmic attribution or econometric models?
So this isn't, I don't see this as an or. You know, an econometric model is a theory about the way individual consumers respond to media. That is the maintained philosophy, that if we're interested in managing media against consumers, that consumers were interested in modeling rather than the data. This is in stark contrast to those that, you know, throw a model at data, or, you know, an MMM sort of approach that would just have an approximation based on a model of the data. So, you know, start at the foundation at which decisions are being made by consumers and how media is affecting them with a consumer model. That's the econometric model. The algorithm is how we actually train that model and deploy it to actually compute attribution and what-if scenario planning and decision support that is in a way that leverages machine learning, keeps the insights fresh, and is able to scale to very large data and provide fresh results on a regular cadence.
Next question, you know, as a young company, how do you benchmark the growth you should be having? So what industry-wide assessments do you do to monitor competitive activity and then fund the brands appropriately?
Great. So I guess that's for Casper?
Yes.
That's a tough one. We like to view it as kind of almost like golf, where we're competing against ourselves, where we set targets for ourselves and we push ourselves to improve and do better. It's less of a measure against, you know, I mean, we can't measure against the larger established competitors because they are incredibly large. And it's hard to measure against kind of some of the copycats that have sprung up the last year or two because they're so small. For us, it's really setting challenges and continuing to push ourselves and setting stretch goals and hitting those stretch goals and setting more stretch goals. And I think it's not, I mean, though people measure success with market share or dollars and cents, that's an attitude we have across the whole organization, where every single team is really just, you know, top-notch and setting targets that increasingly look increasingly challenging and difficult, and then we knock those out of the park and then go to the next one. So it's funny when I have these conversations and people, you know, why is Casper so successful? If you ask anybody at Casper, I sure will acknowledge that we're doing well, but we're always just so heads down focusing on the next challenge that we don't necessarily take much time to kind of appreciate the success or kind of take it into account. We're just kind of like, what is our next challenge?
And were you confronted with any data collection issues during this process, and how did you address them?
I mean, there's always data collection issues. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a perfect data set. What you do is triangulate, you find methods around it, and you don't want to build the whole house in day one. You want to build what you need when you need it. So some of the tools we're working on today would have been overkill, you know, when we started. You know, multi-touch-attribution would have been overkill, you know, when we sold our first attribute. However, now we need those tools. And so we increasingly have more complex challenges, and then we have to either bring up, you know, more people, more skills, new platforms, new tools to meet those challenges. It's never which makes it so exciting for me is that it's never, being on the analytics team is never an issue of, you know, just throwing more bodies at something. Really, every few months we have to have kind of a mini existential crisis and decide, what are we doing, how do we add value to the company, and what is our next step of evolution as a team.
Getting a couple of questions on what types of statistical methods Casper is using for conversion path modeling.
I mean, so we rely on Convertro's algorithm for multi-touch attribution for our conversion path.
I mean, I can comment specifically. I think people are looking for some more specifics here. As I said earlier, the underlying theory of conversion is one of consumer choice and founded in the consumer choice modeling framework, which we are assuming that the unobservable component is extreme value, so that gives rise to a logit. Within that, there are various aspects that are capturing, as I said, the consumer's state or past purchase behavior, the time between the actual conversion and the exposure to the media. To capture time decay, do so non-parametrically using non-parametric survival function within the logit model estimation, other nonlinear transformations that are capturing some of the behavioral nuances. All of those pieces are being brought into one model. Any sort of when we go to attack the attribution problem, it is important to have as many aspects, whether that's aggregated media volume or anything like that, included to control in the MTA level product to get good attribution on the things that we are able to track at a user level. So all the nuances in a single consumer choice model are the goal for any of our MTA deployments.
One comment that says clients tend to gravitate towards lower funnel attribution, and how can we continue to support the upper funnel activities so that the customers continue to consider the brand in their consideration set?
That's an interesting one. Turn off upper funnel and see what happens. I guess that's kind of the extreme, but it's always that balance. You can use a tool like multi-touch attribution to measure upper funnel, but at the end of the day, the most upper funnel is brand, and you just have to have. There are some things you have to understand that there's some things you can measure and there's some things you cannot measure. And you need to have champions within your organization that recognize that building a brand is very important. That would be my answer.
Thanks. So we have a few different questions for Convertro that I think would be best served as follow-ups, including sort of the timeline from signing a contract to first output, and then walking through some sample reports and dashboards to show what types of insights could be expected through this platform. And I might save those so you guys can follow up directly so people have examples that you guys can share, because we have a few more general questions to get to. How do you educate internal stakeholders and sort of manage their expectations in terms of what the attribution platform would do?
So I mean, this is really part of our client service and change management practice. I mean, part of that is understanding what it is multi-touch attribution is doing, really beginning with an understanding of what the data is, how it's coming in, seeing it all in one place, various just raw data visualizations at various levels of aggregation, just having this executive level view, understanding things about the consumer's path to purchase, looking at things at a consumer detail level. And then once we start to, we turn on algorithmic attribution and these results are being fed into the dashboard, packaging that with quarterly reviews and insights presentations that are tailored to the business questions to help our internal stakeholders actually communicate with their audience, their internal clients at their company. So that's on very much a business question by business question basis that we're packaging with the software and the dashboard the right mix of client service and change management practice.
I mean, the only thing I'd add there is that we, at least internally, before we implemented Convertro, we were super excited. So it was never an issue of getting everybody on board, getting everybody excited. it was explaining to people how it would fit into how we would operate with the changes. But everybody was very gung-ho with the multi-touch-attribution tool.
That's great. And just finally, to wrap up, can you share a little bit about sort of how the budgeting for that worked and how senior level buy-in was met? Because we often hear that from our members, that one of the major challenges is getting that internal support and seeing the results.
When we signed up for Convertro, it was probably the biggest contract we'd ever signed as a company. But we were much, much smaller then. For us, we've always looked long term, and I think if you're aiming to be disruptive and transformative in an industry, you cannot focus on the decisions that are kind of 1 month or 2 months out. You need to be looking at where you're going to be a year or two from now, and making sure you're setting yourself up for success there. That was always our attitude.
That's great. Thank you both so much. We had a lot of questions that came through and a lot of questions that we didn't get to address. So if there are additional things you'd like to discuss with them, you can reach Scott at scott.b@casper.com. That's scott.b@casper.com, and Michael at michael.cohen@convertro.com. Michael.cohen, C-O-H-E-N, @convertro.com, or you can always email us at MSI, and we can send the questions along to both Michael and Scott. So our next webinar will be our MSI Research Priorities webinar on June 15th at 1 p.m. We look forward to seeing many of you there. Thanks to the members of the MSI audience for participating in our member-to-member webinar series for your great questions. And thank you both to Michael and Scott for a great webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.